Welcome back to Rugby Rundown, our second episode. And Jan, I look like this not because I had too much to drink, but because I spent the day in the sun standing next to the rugby field, and didn't realize afterwards that I took a hammering. I forgot sunscreen like a bad rugby dad would. So yeah, pardon my red nose and my red cheeks. I've got a sunburn.
We'll believe you this time, MV. I'm sure it had nothing to do with the red wine.
No, that had nothing to do with the red one. It had more to do with a blue team, but we'll talk about that another day. So this is the second episode of our new series, Rugby Rundown, with Jan de Koning from Rugby Unfiltered. Jan is a renowned rugby writer with decades of experience, and I always humbly look up to him. So Jan, tell us what's the latest news? I saw the All Blacks have at last appointed their assistant coaches. What can we learn from that?
I think, unlike with the Razor era, I think they've got a very good team. I think Rennie is already showing his hand. He's got guys with experience. His assistant, or his main assistant, is currently the Taranaki coach. He coached Canada, and he's been around the block a bit. But the most interesting thing for me is that in the mornings before he goes to rugby, so he starts his coaching job, which he calls his hobby. He goes on a farm. He's a proper farmer. And he goes and helps people milk the cows and sort things out on the farm, because he says that clears his head. He says that's his safe space is going to the farm. So, and already, you can see the guys are looking forward to it. So I think we're in the greatest rugby rivalry is going to be a massive, massive series. I think the All Blacks has done their homework, and they got the job right. So yeah, that's a massive development.
So who's milking the cows? Which one of those?
Neil Barnes, which is the main assistant. So he's a farmer from Taranaki, which is unlike Mulu country. That's also cow country. So yeah, but he's a proper farmer, and he's also got a hell of a sense of humor. So there's some clips going around of him in his press conference today. One of the short clips I shared on my channel. And he's you can just see there's a different atmosphere already around the All Blacks.
Yeah, and the other one's, of course, the biggest name there is Tana Umaga, one that we all know, a guy that's known for driving exacting standards, not taking any nonsense. Like you said, this is a proper coaching team, and I've always said Dave Rennie is probably the one guy that knows how to tackle Rassie. He beat Rassie with a Wallabies team. He beat the Springboks with a Wallabies team, and imagine what he can do with an All Blacks team.
Yeah, I agree. That's what I'm saying. It's going to be very interesting in the greatest rugby rivalry. I mean, the All Blacks come here for 4 tests. Well, they're playing 3 in South Africa and then 1 in America. So I'm really looking forward to that.
Mm. Of course, he's got 3 games before that greatest rivalry tour against, amongst others, France. We don't know. France is probably not going to send their strongest team, is it? But you'll have 3 games to get the thing off the ground. But the interesting, like you just said, they took their time. And it looks like they've made proper decisions. Did they leave it a bit late in terms of preparation and stuff for the June tests and the greatest rivalry, or is this the perfect timing?
No, I think their goal would probably be like Russia did in 2018. They're coming in to salvage it. They had a bad run. Our run in 2016, 2017 was much worse than the Razors 2 years. Believe me. I think at one stage we were sitting at a 33% win record, which is shocking for a Springbok team. The All Blacks were somewhere at 60, 70%, and anything below 80% for them is a failure. So that's how high their standards are. So, but I think the July series, France is going to send their B team in any event. They've already said that. The clubs have got, when I spoke to Flock last week, Flock Sillier, the French kicking coach, he made it clear that the clubs hold so much power, the club owners hold so much power that July window is a non-starter for the main French team. The French team must rest. So you see the real French team in November. So there's going to be a B team that's going to tour New Zealand, Australia, and I think Fiji they play. So that's going to be interesting. So yeah. I think that you can it'll give New Zealand a good chance to get off the starting blocks. And Russia's got lots of time. He's got lots of players, and he's doing his work already. So I don't think it's going to be a runaway win. I make us short favourites in August, September. But I really think their goal, or the All Blacks' goal, is clearly for the World Cup next year, 18 months.
Now, of course, the thing is, the French have their top 14 final during that period when they're supposed to be traveling to New Zealand, and that's much more important to them than going to play against the All Blacks in a one-off test. And even when it was 3 tests, they weren't interested. The club championship was more important, like you just said. I'm going to put the link to that interview with you, that podcast you did with Floxel here, up here on your channel, Rugby Unfiltered. Go make sure you go watch it. What an interesting interview that was. And Floxel here, of course, I don't know how many people know it, but the kicking coach for France. I mean, was it the Bulls? Was it the Stormers? However did he end up at France? I'm just curious.
Well, Flock said he was started coaching at Toulouse with Galthy, Fabien Galthy, and he when Fabien went to the French team, he asked Flock. So he was coaching club rugby in France as a kicking coach, and Fabien liked what he did. And now he's a French kicking coach. He's been in France for 7 years already. He was at the Bulls for 10 years. He's at Western Province for a while, or Stormers, and then he went to France. He speaks about most of that, and it's the interesting journey that he's been on. So yeah, he's a hell of a guy and very insightful. Sometimes you take these guys and then you get a lot of insight that the average guy on the street doesn't know.
Yeah. Right, let's talk about, you mentioned the Stormers and the Bulls. Let's talk about this past weekend. Started off with the Bulls putting Cardiff away, a very good first half, a bit of a fade in the second half. What did you think of that performance?
I think it's a better performance from the Bulls. There's a bit more, especially in the first half, there was a bit more oomph in their game. They're a bit more physical. I'm still not sure in the second half they just took the foot off the gas or whether Cardiff was really that good. So to me, that's still, the jury is still out on that one. But I really think the Bulls are on the up. They're looking good for, they keep this kind of performances on. But the Bulls they've got the bogey team, and that's the Stormers. For some other reason, they never pitch up when the Stormers arrive, and vice versa. So the Stormers, in converse, after being so good and clinical against the Bulls, the next week they play a Dragons team, which second last on the table, and they've only won 2 games, and the Dragons gave him a run for their money. So again, was the Stormers really that bad? And the Stormers definitely weren't at their best, or was Dragons just one of those teams that are always close but just never can't get it over the line? I think it's a bit of both, but the Dragons deserve some credit for giving the Stormers a run. But that's a contrast. So the one week the Stormers are absolutely clinical, brutal in their execution. The Bulls didn't pitch. The next week, the Bulls pitch, and the Stormers don't pitch. So yeah, it's just that's the life of a rugby coach.
Yeah, it's a mental thing. I think in terms of the Bulls, sometimes the occasion gets a little bit too big. The whole Loftus and the rivalry. I've been saying that maybe it's being oversold and overhyped, and it gets to the players maybe. But in terms of the Stormers, I think they thought this was going to be a walk in the park. And they weren't really concentrating. I think they were caught out, almost a bit asleep at the wheel, if I could call it that.
Every time the Stormers scored, Dragons came back. So when the Stormers looked like they were 2 scores clear, Dragons came back. And eventually the final margin was about where the game was at, 8 points. The Dragons were pushing for that bonus point try, that third try, and get 2 bonus points out of the game, which would have been a just reward for them. Unfortunately, the Stormers played in spurts, and when they needed to, their defense turned up.
Yeah. Well, I think maybe some of the Stormers coaches would want to ban the chicken wing in some instances. Just take the ball with both hands and pass it properly, man. They've got a couple of tries left on the table, a couple of certain tries.
Yeah, John Dobson made a point of mentioning Damien Willems's chicken wing about 5 times in a post-match press conference. So he definitely wasn't happy.
Coach Kilap. Right, let's talk about the Lions and the Sharks. Now, I, for one, never saw both of those margins coming. I suppose the victories aren't that much of a surprise, but the margins. Let's talk about what happened at Ellis Park. I mean, Edinburgh is not a bad game, but not a bad team by any stretch of the imagination. Yes, they didn't have their full stars. Yes, but they had Boan Venter, who was trying to teach his Scottish teammates some Afrikaans here in Joburg, which didn't go that well. What's happening with this Lions team? I expected them to start fading away after the break, for the Six Nations. Instead, they're upping the tempo and playing better every weekend.
I think they've got confidence finally. They're starting to believe. And whoever did this, if it's Ivan, well done, Ivan. If somebody else, is it Jacques, or is it, whoever is getting the guys up, well done. I think they're playing very good rugby. They are a team that's enjoying their rugby at the moment. And yeah, they're not flawless, but they're playing with confidence. So the margin, you're right. The margin I didn't expect. The win that I thought could happen, because I didn't think Edinburgh would be that good at altitude. You expect them to fade. So yeah, we'll see how it goes this week. Dragons. The difference with the Dragons that's coming to Ellis Park is that they also like to run, as we saw. So unless they run out of puff, they're going to give the Lions, it's going to be a high-scoring game, something like 48-52 or 52-48, somewhere in that region I can expect. The defense will be optional.
That seems to be an emerging trend, isn't it? I mean, even in the Six Nations, we saw extremely high-scoring games. I mean, the game between Scotland and France was 90 points. I mean, France is a top team in the world. France conceded over 80 points in the last 2 games as well. Why do you think that is? Is it the change in the rules, the access, the kicking, a lot of kicking and more attacking rugby? Is defense getting optional, or is the attack now starting to get a bit better and the pendulum is swinging towards attacking teams?
I would lean towards defense becoming optional, because the number of missed tackles in the Six Nations, even though they spoke about the number of tries were the most ever, by 2. It was 2 tries more than the previous highest. But lo and behold, the number of missed tackles was also the highest. So you contrast the number of tries and you see the number of missed tackles, then you realize, the stats balance each other out, and it tells a story of its own. And I think there's a similar sort of picture emerging in the URC.
Right, and then the Sharks, to know an opponent. And not just any opponent, they know Munster. Now, okay, I know it wasn't a full-strength Munster, but it's still Munster. Proper coach, Craig McMillan from the Chiefs. High expectations this season. I'm not sure that he's really lived up to those expectations. But the Sharks seem to be either hot or cold under JP Peterson, and I suppose that it's going to take time to settle down. But why were they so hot this week, or were Munster just that bad? I mean, I was expecting a grudge match after Winkgate last year, but none of the sort, none of that.
The thing with Munster, their internationals are all backline players, so the backline will be in better shape this week. But I don't think their forwards will change much, so they're going to have a hard time at Loftus. Yeah, I spoke to the defense coach this week, Limi, and he admitted, that they're getting a few players back, but the youngsters are learning. He used a very interesting term. He used the term salty, and that just means it's not as lacquer as it should be. They're going to have a tough time at Loftus, because they're training in Cape Town, of all places. They just like it. For some other reason, Munster loves Cape Town. So they play in Durban, they come to Cape Town, they train the whole week in Cape Town, and then Friday they fly up to Loftus. So you won't see them until the game day. Maybe if you get out in town on Friday night, you'll see a couple of stragglers and some of their fans, but you definitely won't see the Munster team. They're going up there for the game, and that's it. So yeah, and they like it. They do that, and they prefer that.
Well, we all know about the famous altitude matters. Sign up at Loftus. I've begged them to take it down, because I think it counts more against the team, the Bulls, than it does for them. I mean, it motivates the other players. Isn't that a problem? I mean, is altitude still an issue? I don't think so. These teams are so fit. I mean, they know that at Loftus you have to slow the game down, fake an injury here, go sit down there. Frank Smith was the master at that, slowing things down. I mean, there are ways and means to overcome the altitude. So does it really matter anymore, playing at Loftus or Ellis Park for that matter?
It matters if the home team knows how to use it. So the Lions last week knew exactly how to use it. Whereas the Bulls, for whatever reason, against the Stormers, I have no idea what they were trying to do, what they were thinking. They didn't use the right tactics. So you can't just expect things to happen and then to get tired. You actually have to have the right tactics. Turn them around, make them run backwards, make them run to their side, and then put pressure on so that they have to run out of their 22 out of their half. Otherwise, no, it doesn't matter because you're not using it to your advantage. And I think that's the problem. So if you look at the Bulls against the Stormers, they didn't use their home advantage. Last week, the Lions used their home advantage and they used the right tactics. They're a hell of a team with really good tactics. And the Dragons coach admitted as much. He said, coming to Ellis Park, they're a very, very clever team. They know when to kick, they know when to run, and they instinctively have that. So I think the best thing for the Lions, and I didn't say I didn't rate him, but I didn't think he was that great. He was just an average player for me. But Chris Smith has come along and leaps and bounds, and he was the best buy the Lions have made in the last 10 years.
Yeah, so many people in Pretoria are saying, why didn't we take Chris Smith back? I mean, why did he end up at the Lions? We know he wanted to come back to the Bulls, and we know why he didn't come back to the Bulls, don't we, Jan?
Yeah, your friend Jake.
My friend Jake. Yeah, no, I have lots of time for Jake. We know that, but I also have it for Johan. The one game that stood out more than anything for me this past weekend, Leinster versus the Glasgow Warriors, or Glasgow Warriors versus Leinster. I, for one, never saw that coming. I mean, neither of the sides had all their players, but Glasgow just basically swept Leinster off the board. I mean, Sam Prendergast looked completely out of sorts. They ruffled his hair. They played games with his mind, I suppose. And he got upset, and then he lost form. I mean, what did you think of that game? And next week, of course, the Bulls play Glasgow in the Champions Cup round of 16. That's an interesting one.
It's an interesting one because Franco, like you said earlier, he knows how to beat the Bulls, and he's done it a lot. He messes with them. But he did that with Leinster. You could see he sort of every now and then there's like a little grin coming. He's really so cool and calm and collected, and I think he's a master tactician. Outside of Rassie, Franco is probably the best South African coach around. And he's tactically so astute. And his team plays for him. For some other reason, they just play for him. And both teams had some players out, but both teams will get players in this week. But Leinster has now got a few issues. They could finish outside the top 4 because they got a couple of tough games coming.
And the Bulls suddenly number 4 on the log, if I'm not mistaken, in terms of points difference. They've turned things around. I mean, that loss against the Stormers, yes, it was a blip. Yes, it was unexpected. Yes, it was very unwelcome, especially considering they run into the top 8. But suddenly they started scoring points again and forcing their opponents, getting their opponents not to score. Defense has taken a step up. Only 7 points conceded against a team that was 5th on the log. Like I said, Cardiff are really good this year, and the Bulls things are clicking in Pretoria, don't you think?
Yeah, I agree. The Bulls, based on the first half, the Bulls are a top 4 finish, definitely. But based on the second half, they're going to scramble for the top 8 finish. So that's a contrast within a game. So never mind the contrast between Cape Town and Loftus when the Stormers are around. The contrast within that Bulls game was that second half. But I still have a wondering whether Johan told the guys to take their foot off the gas and just make sure that because the game was safe. They had their bonus point. You don't want to risk injuries, and you've got a massive Munster team coming this week, and it's a big game for them. So yeah.
All right, let's talk about this upcoming weekend. The Bulls playing Munster. What are you expecting? I mean, like you just said now, Munster bringing back some of their heavy guns, the back line especially. You think the Bulls can pull it off?
The Bulls will start favourites. I'm sure they will. I think if the Bulls forwards pitch, and it looked last week that the leadership issue has been sorted out. I think Johan maybe whispered in somebody's ear, and as you remember, we spoke about that. And it looks like Marcel has taken control, and Ruan Nortje is, I wouldn't say he's playing second fiddle, but he's listening to the captain and speaking when he needs to speak. I think the control and the leadership in the game, on the field, was much better than the previous week. And if that's the case, you got to put your money on the Bulls, but just don't put your house on it.
No, I can tell you from first-hand experience, the leadership is not a problem with the Bulls, but we'll talk about it in some more details another day. It's not an issue. I guarantee you. Take it from me. Anyway, moving on. Let's look at what other games is coming up, South African-wise. The Hollywood Bet Sharks taking on Cardiff. Now, Cardiff, limping along. I see they still haven't signed Cornel van Zyl as the head coach. I would have expected them to do that by now, don't you think?
Their problem is that there's that uncertainty about whether Wales are going to have 4, 3, or 2 franchises or going forward. So they've got a problem with their structure. That's a Welsh structure that's not finalized. So you can't appoint somebody full time, say for 3 years or whatever, and next year you get told, no, you're merging with this team or you're merging with that team, and suddenly there's another coach in them. So that's the problem. I think people are missing that point, that whole structure, that decision around how many franchises the Welsh region is going to have in the URC is the problem. Because if they're going to reduce the number of franchises, either keep it 4, reduce it to 3, or reduce it to 2, as they suggested on stage. Even if you just take one franchise away, you've got a whole bunch of extra coaches and players in the market. So that's the issue. So I think that's maybe at the end of the season they'll sit down and make a call on that.
Well, they have actually made an announcement. They said they're going to let Ospreys go. And the owners of Ospreys are going to be allowed to give them the option to buy Cardiff, because Cardiff is owned by the Welsh Rugby Union, as far as I know. So that's the plan. Whether that's going to come to fruition, I mean, there is so much unhappiness, and it caused such an uproar. Like you just said, nothing's been finalized yet. I mean, the quite apparent thing is that the Welsh Rugby Union don't know what they're trying to do. Because initially, like you said, they wanted to reduce it to 2 teams. And then after public pressure, they decided to make it 1 team. And now they seem to be backtracking or backpedaling on that as well. So we don't know. One of our contributors, Hugh Griffin, lives in England and he's a Welsh supporter. So he tells us what's going on there, Scarlet supporter as well. So we'll have to see. So anyway, Sharks against Cardiff. What are you expecting?
I think the Sharks should win this one. Hopefully a few mistakes, but I think we haven't got Eben back yet, but I think Sia might be back this week. So they'll have a decent team. And Huka will be back as well. So they'll have a much better team. But, then who wants to drop Mapimpi? Maybe play Huka on the right wing. Because Mapimpi had a massive game this weekend. It's strange, he seems to think somebody's fading away and suddenly he comes up with a performance like that.
At
I mean,
35.
that one try that he scored, where he caught the ball from the kickoff and just ran through the whole team. That's so classic. So yeah, I think the Sharks should win. They'll be in better shape come Friday night.
All right, and the Lions then have to take on the surprisingly good Dragons. I wonder if Tinus de Beer going to play this weekend. Do you know?
I'm not sure if he is. They didn't say anything about getting who they're coming back. The one thing that I can tell you is that Tlabakanye, Asenati Tlabakanye, is not going to play this weekend because his hearing is this week.
Oh, is it at last?
He's not going to. Yeah. So that's an important thing, is that he's not going to play because he's got 3 days of hearings. There was 3 days set aside for his hearings, and it means 3 days that he can't train with the team. Yeah, and I think he's going to be in a fit shape to actually play.
So what's the scuttlebutt about what's going to happen there? I mean, why did number one? I know why it took so long, because the substance that was found in him doesn't necessarily lead to an automatic suspension. But I mean, still, it's months and months and months down the line. So what is the expected outcome, do you think? I mean, I'm sorry, I'm veering off the track a little bit here, but I'm interested to hear.
No, it's fine. It's actually very complicated. Let's remember, he was found with a non-performance enhancing substance. So because of that, he could carry on playing. It was just announced he had this thing as a non-performance. But in his forms, what happened is in his forms, he didn't know what had happened. So he put everything that he was prescribed to him by the doctors. And in that, there was something that's illegal. It wasn't in his system. They didn't find it in his system. His test didn't show it up. But because he listed it on his form, they now charge him with it.
Oh, I didn't know that.
So, it's a very complicated system. So if you remember, if you go back when SA Rugby put out a statement, they first put out a statement about Tlabakanye last year. In that statement, and this week I did an article on Monday again about this. In that statement, SA Rugby said it was prescribed to him by a medical professional, was advised by a specialist, a medical specialist who was advised by a medical professional appointed to look after the players. So the Lions, and I'm going to choose my word carefully here, but the Lions team doctor, in essence, sent him to a specialist. The specialist prescribed something. He took the medication back to the Lions team doctor and said, this guy prescribed this, can I use it? And whether the team doctor checked what it was or didn't check what it was, I have no idea. That probably will all come out in the hearing. All that stuff's going to come out in the hearing. But because he took that stuff, he wasn't sure what it was, because that's why I took it to the doctor. Because he took it, he listed it on his medical form when he had the test. And that's where they found out. But it wasn't in his system anymore. But it's on his form because he took it. Mm-hmm. And that's what the second charge is for. So there's two charges. The one, which probably will be, nothing will come off. But the second one is the form listed on his, that he willfully taking it. And that's where it becomes a nightmare, because this is now lawyers going to be arguing for. That's why it takes 3 days. It's not your average. Sorry, I took my mother's dietary tablets because I was a bit overweight. He went to a doctor and it was prescribed to him. And Saru made a point. If you must actually go read. If you get a chance, either take it from my article that I did on Monday. I'll send you the link just now. Or just go to the Saru statement, find the Saru statement. In the Saru statement, they specifically lay out how this all transpired. So it's not a state secret that this was prescribed to him by a doctor. And it's out of his system already. And only because he listed it on the form and that's the problem.
Yeah. And how does it work now? It's going to be 3 days, like I said, it's going to be lawyers and stuff involved. Who's the presiding officer? Is it a judge, a lawyer? Is it a rugby person? Who's going to be the guy who decides this?
SAIDS has not said who it's an independent committee. These committees are all independent. But yeah, it's an independent committee. And they will decide how long they need to make a decision. So it could be days, it could be weeks. We've seen some of these things carry on forever. Because if it's 3 days of testimony and arguing, it's going to take a while to. So it's not just Friday we're going to have a result. Something might come up in the first day or by the second day, and suddenly say, listen, let's just withdraw the case. This is rubbish, throw it out. Or it might take them a couple of weeks to decide. So there's no certainty as to when we will know the results, and we don't know who the people are. And the hearing is not open to the media either.
Well, Asenati is playing as an important part of this, to play a role to play at the Springboks. I mean, Rassie's been, taking him on tours and giving him opportunities to play. We know Frans Malherbe is now coming back, and on the subject of Frans Malherbe, how much truth is there to the rumor that he might be ending up at La Rochelle?
I have absolutely no idea. He's at Stormers training. I've seen him the last couple of weeks when I went to the Stormers training sessions. You see him there. He doesn't train much. He's training around the Stormers, but he's not taking part in any of their team sessions. So, he was on the verge of retiring when a couple of people whispered in his ear, maybe he shouldn't retire. So he's still on his way to come back. So I'm not sure why La Rochelle would sign him if they don't know that he's, he might not play again.
But you've never heard that rumor?
There's no guarantee when he'll be back on the field. It might not even be this season.
I like how diplomatically you put it. Some people whispering in his ear. There's only one guy who whispered in his ear, and we know who that is. Interesting. Right. Lastly, the stuttering Stormers. Oh, I love that. I mean, Harry's going to just lay into me for saying that. And all those, Stormers supporters who accuse me of bias. I'm just kidding, guys. I love the Stormers. But what do you think? Edinburgh a bit wounded. I mean, they would have expected better. Are they bringing some of their players back, like the Piers Schoemans of the world? Or are they just continuing with the players that they had?
No. Those famous Scotsmen, like John Robson said last week, those famous Scotsmen, Piers Schoeman and Duan van der Merwe, very Scottish names. Piers Schoeman is definitely back. I don't know if Duan, the other Scottish wing is back. So I don't know if Duan is going to play. But yeah, they're getting some of their more Scotland players back. So they'll be a different team as well. Dobson had an interesting theory that maybe because they didn't have their best team, they gave a lot of the youngsters a run at Ellis Park because they didn't think they could do that. They thought that Ellis Park is a bit too far. So they're coming for this game to get their points, which is going to make for a heck of an interesting game. And I will be going to the game on Saturday night. 7 o'clock kickoff. It's going to be a heck of a game.
All right. Well, you maybe send me the media conference afterwards.
I will do as always.
I know. I'm just kidding. Thank you, Jan. One hand washes the other, like we said. Now I'm interested to see what this game is going to bring up. Like you said, the Stormers didn't really, they flattered to deceive a little bit last week. They weren't really switched on, and I still think they might have underestimated. Maybe it was a timely wake-up call. You're not just going to pitch up and win every single game. I mean, after the Bulls, they might have had a bit of a false sense of security that we're back on track. They needed to keep working, and like I said, yes, they won. Yes, it was a bonus point victory, and I'm happy that they did. Anyway, I've taken a lot of your time. Thank you, Jan. Appreciate it for making time for me this late in the day. And as always, looking forward to next week. Thank you, man.
All good. Thank you very much. Always a pleasure, and anytime.